This is It Was a Thing on TV.
Total Red Man has ever done something like this to me! It's, time!
Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the dregs of humanity!
Episode 290, submission number 060, Stumpers, and 50 Grand Slam. Both Stumpers and 50 Grand Slam aired on NBC Daytime from October 4th to December 31st of 1976 for 65 episodes each. We're back in the world of game shows from the 70s, and the 70s were the halcyon era of the game shows. I mean, we had Match Game, Family Feud, The Hollywood Squares, The Price is Right, Password, Password All-Stars, Password 76.
Password 76? Now you're just making stuff up.
Not 75? Anyway.
Well, that was the post All-Stars password, yeah.
Yeah. The $10,000 Pyramid, The Joker's Wild. And then there are shows like these two, which bowed and were canceled on the exact same day. Mike, do you happen to have a copy of the NBC 1976 schedule on you by any chance?
By chance, I do.
Ooh, my man. What was actually on in the summer and early fall of 1976 on NBC Daytime?
To start out the year, you had Celebrity Sweepstakes, Wheel of Fortune, Hollywood Squares, High Rollers, and something called Take My Advice. That barely lasted 2 weeks into 1976, and actually got replaced with the return of the Magnificent Marble Machine, future entry. Talk about a giant pinball machine. And then Magnificent Marble Machine got canceled in June of 76, replaced by reruns of Sanford and Son. Plus also you had a couple of new shows in Fun Factory, which we actually talked about the previous episode, and also a little show which got some legs called The Gong Show. And among the shows they replaced was that Take My Advice Again, must have come back at some point, and Magnificent Marble Machine, and the original High Rollers were canceled for those three shows. And that's how it stayed until October 4th of 1976, when Fun Factory was canceled and Celebrity Sweepstakes was canceled. And in their places were these two shows. You had Hollywood Squares actually changing time slots from 11:30 to 10:30 to fit for Stumpers, and Grand Slam just flat out replaced Fun Factory at noon.
Yeah. And around this time, there would be somebody that I believe we talked about this woman a while ago, lady by the name of Lynn Boland.
Hey everybody, it's Greg. I'm sorry. I wasn't really on the first 15, 20 minutes of this episode because I was occupied doing something else at the time. But I don't believe that we had ever discussed Lynn Boland on the podcast prior to this episode of Stumpers and 50 Grand Slam. But I could be wrong.
Now, if you are a game show fan of a certain age, like Greg, Mike, and myself, you know who Lynn Boland is, and you know what she's famous, some would say infamous, for. Because she had an idea to bring the ladies to watch NBC Daytime by getting her guys on these shows. And of course, from that era, you have Jeff Edwards hosting perennial favorite Jackpot. You'd have Chuck Woolery hosting Wheel of Fortune, obviously. I don't know if you would call Peter Marshall one of her guys, but he was doing Hollywood Squares for a fair bit. But then you'd have these two shows.
And you'd also have, I think, her favorite beefcake, if you will, not that I use the word beefcake much regarding this guy, Alex Trebek, when he hosted High Rollers and also Wizard of Oz.
How could I forget Alex Trebek?
Well, you just did.
How did I forget that? Why did I forget that?
And also, he would have been reasonably young at this point, in his 30s. I think you got to add Jim McCrell to the mix. Maybe he wasn't a stud or a beefcake by any.
Well, neither was Peter Marshall, but he still got the eyeballs.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, Jim McCrell with Celebrity Sweepstakes, he wasn't necessarily the eye candy for the females, but still, he was of that age and he was in that era.
And then you have these two shows, one of which she actually helped create. And that would be Stumpers.
If your partner and you can follow the clue and say the name, you'll win the game and the chance to win $20,000. And now here's Anita Gillette and her partner Bonnie Cerf and Phil Bixby with our returning champion Jess Peterson, all here to play Stumpers. And here's the host of Stumpers, Alan Lutton.
Well, it was done by her production company, so she didn't just have a hand in it. This was like her thing. She was the executive producer. It was her production company. So she didn't just have a hand in this. No, she created, she did everything. And using a line I've used in the past, she may have done everything but catering for all we know.
Yeah, well, she did develop this show with a guy by the name of Bill Barr. Not that guy, but Bill Barr. And the object of the game, it was basically password, but it was password for jackholes, basically. Because you're not giving a clue to your partner, you're giving a clue to your opponent. And you're actually giving the most difficult clue available to you, to your opponent. Because you're given 3 clues at the start, and the less clues it takes for you to get the stumper, the more it's worth to you. And if the opposing player was unable to guess the stumper after 3 clues, then the clue-giving team would get the full 15 for round 1 and the full 30 for round 2. And that's only for a correct guess. If neither team gets the stumper, no points were awarded. And each player gets 2 stumpers. And the team ahead at the end of round 2 wins the game and a chance at $10,000 in the Super Stumper round. Now, if there was a tie, Alan Ludden, who, by the way, was the host of Stumpers and just one of the best in the game during the 70s, he would provide clues, and it would be an all-play situation with the person who comes up with the correct stumper winning the game. In any event, they go on to play the Super Stumpers round, which the object of the contestant was to guess the subject of Stumpers with the celebrity giving clues. Of course, because you're on the same team, the clues would actually have to be more helpful in guessing the subject instead of the other way around during the normal part of the game.
We should also add that the points, since this wasn't clarified earlier, in round 1, if the word was gotten on one clue, it was worth 15 points, 10 points if it was gotten on the second clue, 5 if it was on the third, double those values for round 2. So hypothetical maximum is you could get up to 120 points in any given game.
And you had 60 seconds to complete the Super Stumpers round. If you get 10 subjects in 60 seconds, you get $10,000. If not, you get 100 for every subject you successfully conveyed. And of course, the show itself was long enough so that you could fit 2 complete games without having to straddle. It was basically like Password or Pyramid, even down to the same structure. I think Bill Barr and Lynn Boland may have lifted a trick or 2 from the Book of Bob Stewart. I don't know. Now, because this was an NBC show, there was theoretically no limit to how many games you could play. You could play until you were defeated.
No, not really, because if you won the Super Stumpers round twice, if you won $20,000,
Oh, that's right.
and actually, I think it's on the final episode, somebody does that. They win both Super Stumpers rounds that day, and even though the show was canceled as the final episode, they were retired, technically.
And like we said, it was hosted by Alan Ludden, who was perhaps one of the biggest names in game shows up to that point, having done both College Bowl and Password in his illustrious career. And announcing would be Bill Armstrong with Charlie O'Donnell. Yes, that Charlie O'Donnell doing a secondary work. But Bill Armstrong, aside from Stumpers, also announced Celebrity Sweepstakes and was the host for one season of Flyers Club. And fun fact, if you remember early Pack Century, the reel-to-reel picture show with Peter Marshall, he was the announcer for that.
It's the Reel-to-Reel Picture Show from Universal Studios, Florida, where today, 2 contestants and their movie star partners play for fabulous prizes and the chance to win the movie vacation of a lifetime. And here's the star of the Reel-to-Reel Picture Show, Peter Marshall.
Hope he got paid for it.
Oh, good.
Well, that's the reason it didn't last that long, because nobody got paid.
Nope.
I will add about this show, if you've never seen it, I think visually it's amazing, especially for 1976. First off, the entire set is just about black. The only thing that's illuminated is the play area. And the play area is very cool, very illuminated, a lot of lights as you'd probably expect. But I think the one thing that's like super cool is you have an overhang, like a marquee, almost like a marquee, like at a movie theater where you have the names of the shows and the stars or whatnot. You had that sort of overhang with the clues, and they were being projected through that overhang. But I think even cooler than that is for the bonus round, the marquee literally goes up 90 degrees vertically, and you have the scoreboard for the Super Stumpers round. I think that is absolutely the coolest thing.
Yeah, that is some sort of technical marvel. I mean, you imagine, because I've seen some of the clips online, that marquee is not just the marquee, but it's also sort of like a marquee with a slide projector attached to it.
Yeah, that's what I said, because it projects the words out. Yeah.
And you have to be extremely careful whenever you have to move that. So yeah, that's pretty advanced for 1976.
Well, one thing I will add is looking through IMDb for this show, some of the celebs, they list among the celebs Vicki Lawrence, Ross Martin, Bill Bixby. Bill Bixby is actually on the finale. Jamie Farr, Betty White. I mean, that makes perfectly good sense she'd be on there. But one name, and I did a little bit of sleuthing, Jack Cassidy. And the reason I bring him up is in 1976, he died in a fire at his house. Doing even more research, he died on December 12th of 1976. The week of episodes that he was on started the very next day.
Oh,
His week was posthumous, 13th through the 17th of December. So third to last week of shows.
That is, wow, that's crazy.
The stuff you learn on this podcast.
Indeed.
One more thing I want to add. Who did the theme song?
Alan Thicke.
Alan Thicke. Oh, good. There's no phone ringing.
No phone ringing this week.
For the record, this is why I was occupied, to prevent Alan from calling into my phone.
So, aside from Alan Ludden being the host, and Charlie O'Donnell and Bill Armstrong announcing, and Alan Thicke doing the theme music. We had a bit of an interesting story about this show because NBC actually, I'll save that for later, because the same fate would actually befall upon the show that followed Stumpers. And that would be 50 Grand Slam.
Meet the competitors. General Knowledge champion Dwayne Myers returns for more competition. Returning to compete in 20th century American fiction, Rose Lee Holman. TV trivia champion Randy Kaplan returns to make a decision that could be worth $1,000. On NBC's biggest money program, the 50 Grand Slam. And here's the star of the program, Tom Kennedy.
Hello again. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, and welcome once again to the 50 Grand Slam, where a person with the courage to go for broke can earn from $200 all the way up to a grand prize of $50,000.
Now, this show was not created by Lynn Bolan. Lynn Bolan did not have a hand in it at all, whatsoever. But, come on, when Ralph Andrews has a show, are you going to say no to it? I mean, this is the same guy who came up with You Don't Say, Celebrity Sweepstakes.
Lingo. We talked about him. Lingo in 87.
Yeah, I was just about to say, he's still 11 years away from launching Lingo into the world. 50 Grand Slam was billed as the return of the big money game show because a player has a chance to win $50,000 in a game show with both quiz elements and challenge elements from time to time. And this is going to be a bit of a bear to explain, but hear me out. Each episode consists of 8 contestants with 2 competing at the same time. They were matched up based on a specific category or ability of expertise. And then there was a general knowledge one. Each head-to-head played out with a 4-part question. The current champion, or the winner of a coin toss, would decide whether to play first or second. The first player heard the question and answered it. The second would be placed in an isolation booth. Presumably the giant 0 on set. Because remember, there was a 50 Grand Slam, big logo on the set.
Well, sort of.
Kind of, sort of.
What there were 2 cubes, and they rotated at the start of the show and also at the end of the show. And that's actually the isolation booths the players would be in, was the 0 on those cubes.
Okay. Now, in order to have that logged in as an official match, you had to have answered 2 parts of the question correctly. The player who answers the most parts correctly wins that game. And for every game they won more money, with the stipulation that they could walk at any time. Because if they lost the next game, I believe they would lose the money that they've already won, right?
Except at the $50,000 level. If they lost going for $50,000, they did win a car as a consolation prize.
Okay. And it takes 8 games to win the $50,000.
Also, in the event of a tie, it's considered a draw. They both win that amount of money and get the option to continue or to leave, except for the $50,000 question. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So you do need to win against 8 opponents in order to win the $50,000.
Yeah, you have to log in 8 wins. Now, this is primarily a quiz show, but like I said, there were some episodes in which you had to complete a challenge.
An example of one of the events that people would do in lieu of playing questions was on the premiere episode, 2 contestants battled in a golf chipping competition trying to get a golf ball into like a 55-gallon drum. And from a certain distance, it couldn't have been too far. I mean, stages are only so big, so it must have been 10, maybe 15 yards at most. And this must have been dropped really early on because I think the first episode, nobody hit anything. There were no balls in the drums. And actually, I have seen, courtesy of a friend of the podcast, Nick Brobeck, who has a Twitch stream every Monday night showing different game show episodes. He showed the 11th episode, which would have been dated October 18th of 76, about a month or so ago. And they had a golf competition, but they weren't chipping balls into the 55-gallon drum. It was a miniature golf competition where a green was laid out across the stage, again, maybe about 10, 12, 15 yards. And they had to chip it to begin with to get on the green, or maybe they could use the putter. But regardless, they had 2 shots to get in the hole. And actually, they ended up tying in that event. They both used 6 strokes to in the 4 turns. Actually, not just 6 strokes. 6 strokes to get 3 balls sunk. So they tied getting 3 balls in the same number of shots. But we're going to talk more about that episode in a little bit. The Monday episode of week 3, because there's something very interesting that's going to come up.
You know, all this talk about balls, and by the way, I haven't said a word edgewise in this episode yet. All that talk about balls made me think it would be much more fun if there was a game involving Mr. Bucket.
Mr. Bucket, put your balls in my mouth.
Mr. Bucket, I'm a mouthful pop. Mr. Bucket, ooh, buckets are fun.
I like Mr. Bucket.
But yeah, besides the golf competitions, I really haven't seen anything in a non-academic question basis. The money, though, we didn't even talk about the money. We talked about, you need to either beat or tie your opponent to move up the money ladder until you get to that $50,000.
Yep. You do it once, it's $200. Do it again, $500. Third time, it's $1,000, and then $2,000, then $5,000, then $10,000 for the 6th level, $20,000 for the 7th, and you get to the 8th and final level, you complete the 50 grand slam, you win $50,000.
And we should add that any given challenge or category was in play until 9 contestants played it, or someone won the $50,000. And actually, in the history of the show, 5 people won the $50,000, including, I don't know, I think this is the first $50,000 winner. I said on the Monday episode of week 3, there was more we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the first, presumably, $50,000 win. It was in the category of, I want to say, like plays or Broadway, something related to that genre. And the rule to win the $50,000 is you had to get all 3 questions right. You could have won the match, but couldn't get anything wrong. And I think it may be due to this episode. Because as I sort of allude to, somebody played for $50,000. This entire segment was a huge mess. I forget what the question was about, but they had the wrong answer listed. So actually, in this match, it ended up being 1 correct answer for the person going for $50,000 against 0. The other person got all 3 wrong. But then Tom Kennedy came on and said, we made a mistake. This is the right answer. So it's actually 2-1, not 1-0. And the rule at that point apparently wasn't just win, but you only had to get 2 out of 3 to get the $50,000. So with this revelation that they had the wrong answer, or there was an alternate right answer, this guy won the $50,000. And truth be told, $50,000 in 1976. I'm not going to ask Greg to get the inflation calculator out, but I'm guessing $50,000 in 1976 is worth about $250,000 today, maybe even closer to $300,000.
I have it right here, actually. $50,000 in 1976. You were close the first time, Mike. It's worth a little over $260,000 today.
A lot of money. Even $50,000 nowadays is a lot of money. But you're talking about really, truly life-changing money in 1976. This might have been the most anticlimactic, least exciting, big money victory on any game show ever. Because again, number one, Tom Kennedy comes out and says, oh, for the first question, you guys had the right answer. We had the wrong answer. Our bad. But then he just declares the person that had two right the winner. Hey, you just won $50,000. No sirens going off, no lights going off. You had just the theme, and you had the contestant there sort of shell-shocked. No excitement for a big money show, for all the technology, for this big light board that we haven't even talked about yet, which is an amazing piece of technology. All you had on the screen was the old Solari flippy numbers with $50,000 on the screen. I don't even think it was flashed. And you had the theme playing in the background. Not any sort of special version of the theme, not a victory theme or a win theme. You had the basic theme. Absolutely the most underwhelming, lackluster way of celebrating a huge victory. I wish I had video of it. I should have asked Nick to see if I could somehow borrow video or audio so you guys could see this. It is horrible.
I got a question. Is this more underwhelming than the Beat the Clock 79 finale?
Very much so. $50,000. You should have lights and sirens and family coming up from the audience and
you'd be dropping balloons, confetti,
and dropping balloons, confetti, a giant check for $50,000. Something. You
a
just
guy
don't
in a
have
chicken
this,
suit. Come on, give me something.
You don't have just this 60, 65-year-old contestant just standing there smiling because you just won $50,000, showing no excitement. And just, again, playing the theme, no theatrics, underwhelming. And again, I wish I had video of it. I don't want to infringe on Nick if he has, certain connections or whatnot, but it's disappointing, especially again for this show where you have all this technology and it just is visually appealing. And then your first big winner comes off like that, where, oops, we screwed up on this. You just won $50,000. Thanks for coming, opponent who only got one question right, and that was our mistake as well. Absolutely horrible. Not even, I can't even say it's good TV. Usually a big winner is good TV. This is the exact opposite of it. It was horrible. Horrible. But hey, let's get back to that big light board. My gosh. I mean, this set was amazing. This whole set was amazing. I mentioned the two rotating cubes, which acted as isolation booths, which are just laden with lights. Oh my God. The electric bill on this show must have been sky high. If you remember the Bruce Forsyth's Hot Streak episode, I think Greg and Chico might have fawned over this as well. At the end of the show, there would be this big light board that would come from the rafters, and it would have strobe lights on it showing how much the team won. And amazing. Oh my gosh. I loved it back in 1986. The scoreboard, or at least not really the scoreboard, but over the in the introduction, when Tom Kennedy introduces the TV show, he mentions that they could win up to $50,000, and you have the increments, the money amounts appearing on this light board behind him. It's similar to the light board from Hot Streak, but this goes across this entire span of the stage, and it's probably, I'm guessing, about 10 feet high or so. This is a big light board. I mean, we probably haven't seen anything anywhere near this size until, I'm going to say, Match Game Hollywood Scores Hour, where you had this amazing light board stretching through the entirety, or at least 2/3 of the studio. But yeah, that episode, and that ended the episode. I think that was the last player, and it just sucked all the energy out of the room. Not that there was much energy because, everybody else is going for smaller amounts of money, but that was a disappointment.
That's just... And the thing about those cubes, Mike, they weren't just spinning around. They were also moving to make the set seem bigger than it already is.
Oh, yeah, they rotated, yeah.
It's like they were moving, like they split off. That was impressive. I mean, especially in 1976 terms, that was incredible. And when it started out, it just seemed like there was space to do almost anything. It's like Tom Kennedy pointed out, physical and mental challenges. Obviously, you had the mental challenge with the booths and whatnot, and you had the space to do the physical challenge. Of course, I guess the physical challenges were phased out early on, and it became purely a mental challenge. But yeah, you could do a lot with that stage.
We should also mention that for the premieres of both episodes, the respective hosts of the other shows visited each show. So you had Tom Kennedy going on Stumpers to promote that because it came on after Stumpers, but also you had Alan Ludden going to visit Tom Kennedy on 50 Grand Slam. So that's part of the reason I think we're packaging these two shows together, is they sort of are sister shows, complementary shows, even though they don't really have a whole heck of a lot in common besides they premiered on the same day and got canceled on the same day.
You know what? Kudos to NBC for, having one host on the other's show for that hour that day. I mean, they wanted to hype up Stumpers. They wanted to hype up 50 Grand Slam. Obviously, you had two of the best to do it with Alan Ludden and Tom Kennedy. I mean, this looked like it was going to be exciting, and they wanted to create that vibe of excitement. So, obviously, they got Alan Ludden on the set of 50 Grand Slam, be all excited about what's going on, and they have Tom Kennedy on the set of Alan Ludden's Stumpers. I have to wonder, I want to believe in their heart of hearts that they believed that this hour of game shows was going to be an event. This was something that you're going to have to make time for. Something you're going to have to plan your lunch around. Because remember, back in 1976, game shows weren't just relegated from 9 a.m. to noon. They were pretty much from 11 o'clock to 3 o'clock. They did a pas de deux with your mama's stories, basically. I've got the schedule right here. In 1976, the day began with Sanford and Son, followed by the Hollywood Squares, Wheel of Fortune, then Stumpers, 50 Grand Slam, The Gong Show, Days of Our Lives, The Doctors, Another World, and then it was over. And that was just on NBC. On ABC, you would have Up Against Stumpers, and this is going to be another look at the schedule here. Up Against Stumpers and 50 Grand Slam on ABC from the hour of 11:30 to 12:30 would be a rerun of Happy Days and something called Hot Seat.
Well, that's only for the first 3 weeks. Hot Seat did not last very long. It was basically kind of sort of Newlywed Game with a lie detector.
So it was the moment of truth, basically.
Yeah, sure. And it was hosted by Jim Peck. Beloved Jim Peck. We've talked about him previously.
Yeah.
Second Chance in 1977. But then starting in October 25th of 76, the Don Ho Show replaced it at noon.
The Don Ho Show?
Yeah, Don Ho.
I know who Don Ho is. I didn't think he had a show.
Yeah, Don Ho had a show. Tiny bubbles in the wine. Sing it, Greg.
Make me happy. Make me feel
fine.
Champagne's not Corbell!
Hey, remember that classic episode of Mystery Diners with the fake Don Ho ukulele? Oh, since I haven't mentioned it, hold on, we gotta do this.
This is CNN Breaking News.
For Prime Day, they had Discovery Plus available for 99 cents for 2 months. And you know who bid on it? Me. For one reason. To stream all the episodes of Mystery Diners. And guys, in December, we're going to do a sequel to Mystery Diners. That's right! We're going to do another Mystery Diners episode in December.
Greg's already found an episode which tops Release the Drone.
Oh, yes. It's so great.
2 words. Roller cam.
now, you see, when I said Don Ho and started singing Tiny Bubbles, Greg, I thought you were going to go a totally different direction.
Oh.
The Mole, don't you remember?
I did say the Mole.
Did you?
Yeah, I did.
No, you didn't.
Yes, I did. I said the Mole. You see, when Mike set up Tiny Bubbles, that's when I thought I mentioned the Mole, because that was referencing that one part from Mole 2, as me and Mike are going to talk about in a bit right here. Oh, wait, maybe I didn't. But yeah, the Mole. There was a moment where, like, they were trapped in a room and Don Ho's Tiny Bubbles was playing.
with little bubbles all over the place.
Yeah, this was the second season of The Mole. Yeah. When they were in Hawaii, I believe. Yeah, that's why I thought Greg was going to go with Don Ho and Tiny Bubbles, but no, I like where he went a lot better with Don Ho's ukulele.
The fake Don Ho ukulele.
The fake Don Ho ukulele.
That very well played there, Greg.
Oh, what a great episode that was of Mystery Diners. The memorabilia episode.
Yep. Well, yeah.
Oh, well, we should also mention CBS because...
Yeah, I was like, what were we talking about? Oh, yeah, CBS. Okay, yeah. So CBS was the same deal. Yeah. Love of Life was at 11:30, and The Young and the Restless was at 12. This was back when The Young and the Restless was a half-hour show, and it didn't have that whole classic logo we all know and love so much.
It probably wouldn't even have had Nadia's theme at this point, because Nadia would have just
theme at the time. It started out with Nadia's theme.
It did. Oh, I thought Nadia's theme came before. Oh, okay.
I mean, granted, the opening looked different, but Nadia's theme was still playing. Still had the drawings of the cast members. I actually looked at the history of the Young and the Restless opening theme on YouTube. So,
okay.
So you had Love of Life and Young and the Restless on one channel, Happy Days and Hot Seat on another channel, Stumpers and 50 Grand Slam on NBC.
Well, and Don Ho. Don't forget Don Ho, because Hot Seat was only the first 3 weeks. So when you look at the competition, Love of Life, very strong soap opera for CBS in the day. Happy Days reruns. Was there any bigger show? I mean, at this point, this had only been the third season of Happy Days, and they're already showing it in daytime reruns.
Yeah, well, Three's Company didn't hit yet.
Well, it just started at this point.
Exactly.
76 would have been the start.
It didn't hit.
Okay, fair enough. And, of course, the noon slot. What do we need to say about that? That's the usual death slot in the daytime. And not just because Young and the Restless, but you also have a lot of preemptions for news. And actually, that was the case here in Cleveland. Against 50 Grand Slam, you had the local news on ABC and the local news on CBS. I was also going to add, I see what strategy I think NBC was trying to utilize here, because Wheel of Fortune, big show, even back in 1976, a big show with one of Lynn Boland's studs, Chuck Woolery, who's only probably in his early 30s at this point, if not even a little younger. And then at the end of the block at 12:30 after 50 Grand Slam, you have the Gong Show, and that just blew up like gangbusters in 1976. That was like the breakout show of 1976 in the daytime.
Oh, yeah. America loved Chuck Barris in 1976.
And Chuck Barris loved America.
So why not put your two new shows in between the really hot thing at 11 o'clock with the good-looking host and the really good, funny, eccentric, off-the-wall comedy show or talent show afterwards? Okay, so maybe it didn't work, but also, I don't know. Maybe 50 Grand Slam was trying to get some of that Jeopardy type of momentum from a couple of years back. Because remember, Jeopardy was one of those afternoon shows that, when kids were in college or when students were in college, they'd watch that in the afternoon. Yeah. So I wonder if they're trying to sort of build off of that, but also remember that in 1976, you did have another big money quiz show in syndication, the $128,000 question. So maybe there was some sort of quasi-revival trying to go on with the big money shows. I don't know.
Well, we all know who hosted one of the seasons of the $128,000 question.
Mike Darrow.
Well, that and...
I know the other person. I wanted to see how you'd react to Mike Darrow. Yeah.
That's
Alex
why I
Trebek.
said Alex
yeah.
Trebek. That's why I said one of the seasons.
Right.
Yeah, the other one hosted by Alex Trebek. Did I tell you guys I met Alex Trebek?
You mention that all the damn time, Chico. We all know you met Alex Trebek on Jeopardy.
Yes. Did I mention that you love wings?
How did you know, Chico? How did you know this? I've never told anybody in the 290 total episodes now of this podcast. I never told anybody.
I have a good read. What can I say?
I'm so glad I don't have a running gag. I was on a hardball.
You're from Cleveland. That's your running gag. Love you.
That aged like bad cheese.
Okay, so we looked at the schedule. It didn't really stand much of a hope, but Tom Kennedy was not out of work for long, because as soon as this ended, he was right back into it with Name That Tune.
Well, he had the nighttime Name That Tune at that point, too. So he definitely was not out of work.
Alan Ludden, I think he would, is 76? Yeah, he would still be 2 years removed from The Plus.
No, remember he did Liars Club.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So he was a short time away from Liars Club. What he probably was doing in 1977 between Stumpers and Liars Club, he was probably making the rounds with Betty on Tattletales and Match Game.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, as soon as that was over, we have Hollywood Squares and Wheel of Fortune, obviously. And then a new show called Shoot for the Stars. And, of course, Name That Tune. But then they moved the Gong Show to 4 to make room for something called Lovers and Friends.
The hell is that?
I have no idea. Sounds like another one of your mama's stories.
Oh, I bet you it's one of your mama's stories. I guarantee it. Hold on, I'm trying to find it.
Mothers and Friends.
Lovers.
Oh, Lovers and Friends.
We're not talking about the Gloria Loring song either, by the way.
I wish it was about the Gloria Loring song.
Or, sorry, was it Gloria Loring or Vonda Shepard? It was one of
No, I think it was Gloria Loring. I think I know what you're talking about.
Well, it's a good thing Alan's not calling. I disconnected the number, so he can't call. So.
Oh, I already invoked Alan once because he did the theme to Stumpers.
He did. That's why I disconnected it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't know who did the theme music to 50 Grand Slam. But we do know that John Harlan was the voice of the 50 Grand Slam. And what a voice, I should say.
Oh, definitely.
Can we get an appreciation for John Harlan real quick?
We get an appreciation from him all the damn time whenever we watch American Gladiators on Pluto.
Thank you.
Okay, hold on. I got a little something for Lovers and Friends here.
All right.
The only name I recognize among the cast that I see is Nancy Marchand.
Oh, Livia Soprano.
Yeah. So again, that's the only name that I recognize.
The ultimate legacy of Stumpers and 50 Grand Slam is that, of course, for years, the tapes of the premiere and finale of both shows were available on the circuit. Both shows have since been uploaded to YouTube, along with various clips of other episodes, but per the wiping policy of NBC, as they erase old tapes to make way for new content, most of the runs of both 50 Grand Slam and Stumpers are assumed to be lost media.
You never know, though.
But you never know.
Well, I say that because notice the Gong Show survived, and that was right around the same time. But also, you don't know what's in the Ralph Andrews archive. And he has because he passed. His family has a Ralph Andrews production YouTube channel, and they've posted some clips from Lingo